Hello everyone. In this lesson, I suggest adding likes. That means our idea can be liked. You can see how many likes an idea has, know if the current idea is liked or not, and also cancel your like. Let's get started. What could we theoretically do? We could add a field to the idea like users.likes and store some sort of array of users here, something like that. But that's not very good because our idea can have countless likes, and then there would be a huge array. That's not usually done. It's done a bit differently through creating a double relationship. Of this sort, we will create a model called idea-like. They're now called ideas.to like or something like that. Basically, the point is that this entity links ideas and users, and the presence of such a record indicates that the user liked the corresponding idea. What do we have here? There's an ID, a date when this like was created, which might be useful someday, and also these two links. So through ID, we link to the idea, and through user ID, we link to the user. We also note that such a link itself is unique. It can't happen that a user likes the same idea twice. This is the check we'll have. It highlights this in red for us because we need to add the appropriate link references in both the user and the idea. We call code formatting, and it automatically inserts the necessary tags. The only thing I don't like is how it names them by default. The IDE indicates that there is something ID-like, and this is an array. Let's, accordingly, name it in the plural in lowercase, IDS likes, and the user has IDS likes. Well, let's name it that way, IDS likes. Okay, let it be so. We've established the connection. Let's run the migrations now. Prisma migrate dev. Add IDS likes. Great, we ran the migration. So now we need to do the following. We need to add to the backend in our get IDS query information about how many likes each idea has so it can be seen in the list. We also need to add the total number of likes to the get ID endpoint, as well as information about whether we liked the idea. Good. And we need to add an endpoint that users will call from the front end to like or unlike an idea. You can start with anything, but I suggest starting by creating an endpoint for like and unlike. So, let's create this endpoint in the router folder in IDS. And name it set idea like. First, let's define the input. Our input will be as follows. We pass the ID of our idea and whether we are liking it or removing our like. If we are liking, we pass true here. If we are removing our like, we pass false here. Good. Input is defined. Now let's create the endpoint itself. New file, index.es, and let's analyze it. So, this is a procedure that takes the following input. This is our mutation. Okay? We simply extract the idea ID and liked by me from the input. Only authorized users can like these ideas. Then we need to find the idea by the specified ID. It is possible that the idea might not be found, but this can only occur with some inappropriate use of our service. Hence, we have an error for hackers, so to speak. All right, later. We have in the input from liked by me. If we are liking, then we pass true here, and we call the following. In Prisma, there's also a method called absurd. Absurd works as follows. First, tries to find the entity using the parameters specified in the where clause. That is, it searches with this linkage. This linkage exists because we specified a unique constraint here. It looks for the idea ID passed in the input, and in user ID, it passes our ID. In other words, it tries to find an existing record of our like. If it doesn't find one, the create method is called, and a record is created with this user ID and idea ID. But if such a record was found, it means we already liked it, and it's unclear how this request got through. So in update, we pass an empty object, meaning it doesn't need updating. So accordingly, this record can be translated as follows. If such a record is not yet created, create it. And if it is already created, do nothing. Here's what our like looks like. Thank you. Past false, meaning we want to remove our like. Okay, then we get here, in else, and we look for such an idea where the idea ID matches, the one we passed. And user ID is ours, and simply not the idea, but the idea like, and we delete this idea like. All right, if it's not there, then the like isn't there either. Excellent. And then what will the situation be? Because when we sent this request to the backend, we need to understand how many it has now in total likes for this idea, and also return to the front end the information on whether we liked it or not. That's why we calculate the new number of these likes. Likes count is to count all likes for this idea, and it turns out to be likes count. For this, there is a method in Prisma called count. Excellent. And we return it to the front end in this format. An object that includes an idea and its ID, the number of likes, and whether we liked it. Technically, we could somehow calculate likes count ourselves. That is, simply by adding one more to the existing idea's likes count. But at the same time, we don't have the number of likes in this idea. And who knows, maybe while we liked it, someone else did too, and the likes count is different. So let it be so. Good. So this is our endpoint. We'll use it on the front end. Let's look at it again. It might become a bit clearer. All right. Okay. And add this endpoint to the index file itself. Excellent. Add it. So, now let's handle it in the backend. We'll deal with our getIdeas endpoint. And here we will display the number of likes for each idea. All right. To do this, we'll do the following. We need to add this kind of record to our select. You can look this up in the Prisma documentation. Okay, well, so what does this mean? This count, it's not a property in our model, but a feature in Prisma to request a count of related entities in select. We also call select, but for us it's not likes, it's ideas likes. And we output true here. Let's probably do a console.log and see in what format the ideas are returned now. Console.log ideas. On the back end, you can also call console.er instead of console.log. And then the depth of the displayed object will be greater. Okay, let's move to the front end. List of ideas. And we get failed to fetch. All right, let's see what our error is. Property. Ideas. Like does not exist. Maybe the backend didn't fetch new types after migration creation. Let's call it again and look at the console. So, here's our array of ideas. All our old fields and also a field count, ideas likes 0 appeared. Well, 0 because we still don't have likes yet. Okay, but I don't really like this format. It certainly tells the truth, but it will be inconvenient to work with on the front end. So I suggest tweaking this format a bit on the back end and returning it beautifully formatted to the front. Let's do the following. First, Since our ideas are not just ideas, but kind of raw ideas, I suggest naming such variables with the suffix raw, like raw. So, raw ideas. Here we replace with raw ideas accordingly. You can delete the console log, and we will need to make some transformations. Also, it's now ideas, and not ideas, .xe, .next, but raw. Now we need to style our hair. It will look as follows. We go through all our raw ideas that have this format. Take the idea using Lodash, which needs to be imported. That's right, Lodash import. With Lodash's help. We take the existing idea but remove the count field from it, and to this resulting object we add likes count, which we then pass. And now, in ideas, we have a tidy array with our old fields, as well as the number of likes. Great. We've sorted out this endpoint and move on. Next, we need to edit endpoint.getIdea. Here, we need to simultaneously get the number of likes and the information on whether we liked this idea. So, for this, we need to add the following structure to our query. Here we use include instead of select. Therefore, the format is like this. Prisma has two ways to access related record fields, through include and through select, and they are essentially interchangeable. There we looked at select, here we will look at include. So we have ideas likes fields, and here ideas likes. See, here we are querying related ideas likes, taking only their ID and searching for those where user ID equals our ID. But since this endpoint is available for everyone, not just for authorized users, there might not be a user, and hence nothing will return in ideas likes for them. And essentially, ideas likes returns at most one record, either present or not. If it exists, it means we like the idea. If not, it means we either didn't like the idea or we are not authorized. So, based on this field, we'll determine if we like the idea. But we also need information on the total number of all likes for this idea. So here we add count and choose what we will count. We will count ideas likes related to this idea. Okay, but now it also became a raw idea. It has such an output format. That is, author, ideas likes, count. These fields are not very communicative for the front end about where they are located. Therefore, again, we rename this to raw ID, and we tidy up its final output. Okay, well, let's go. Is liked by me is defined as follows. Ideas likes. We take this raw idea, look at the ideas likes field, and check the length. If it's 0, then it is converted to false. If it's more than 0, and the maximum is 1, then it is converted to true. And is liked by me will be the corresponding value. All right, then we need the number of likes. Likes count, ideas likes. How do we calculate it? Here it is. We have a raw idea, but as we recall, it might not be found at all, according to our current code. Therefore, we put a question mark and go to count and see how many were found like ideas likes. Here's the total number of likes. But again, if the idea wasn't found, well, then let there just be 0, so our format doesn't break. And now we need to combine all this into the resulting idea, how it works. That is, if the raw idea exists, then there will be this array. If it's not there, theoretically, we could have null. So then null remains in the idea. So, again, we need Lodash. And again, like this array, encrypt Lodash. Okay, what we do is remove ideas likes from the raw idea. And we remove count. And we also add is liked by me and likes count to this object. So we remove non-readable fields that we've transformed into readable ones, but we leave these fields. Good. And we now have a neat object. And we return this idea. Okay? Good. Okay. Well, it looks like we've done everything we wanted on the back end. Let's now apply this on the front end. Good. On the front end, we also need to add this to the All Ideas page and display the number of likes in the list here. Well, let's do it. Okay. Well, we won't bother much with the layout here. Just display the following entry in our segment as content. Likes, colon. And in our received idea, there's likes count. And that's what we'll display. This is our All Ideas page. Good. Okay, let's go check right away that it's working. The number of likes is currently 0 everywhere. And that's fine. All right, we've managed here. Now let's go to the idea viewing page. And there we will handle displaying the number of likes as well as creating a button for the like itself. Let's first determine where this will be located. Right here, immediately under the text. I want to display the like button. Let's add the following code. We will have a certain CSS likes, then information about the total number of likes, and then, if we are authorized, we will display this like button. As you can see, we're not worrying about layout at all, and we'll simply add a line break. Okay, now let's add the code for this button. Again, it might be better to separate it into a different file, but it's fine if we add it here too. If this button is not reused elsewhere, it's fine to add it to this file. But again, if the file grows and there's a lot of logic, it's fine. You can create a folder right here. Don't move it to components if it's only used on this page. And create a like button here. But for simplicity's sake, we'll keep everything inside this file for now. So, let's analyze this button. Okay? In the like button, the idea itself is passed. We'll need this, at least to know the ID of this idea, and to be able to send a request to our backend, to the endpoint, with this idea like, which is here. Okay? Since we're going to send this request. So, looks like they're complaining again. Well, since we're going to send this request, we'll need this mutation. Here we're requesting it. Here is our set ID like. Use mutation. But we'll make it more complex than we've ever done before. What do I want to do? I want, when a person clicks the like button, we don't wait for the server's response to know whether we've liked it or not. I want us to immediately mark this idea as liked for a pleasant user experience. That means they can quickly click the button and it changes fast, just like you see on social networks. Meanwhile, let the request fly to the server and update the actual data in the database. For this, you can pass the hook on mutate in the use mutation parameters. How does it work? If you look at what's in here, you'll see that this function receives our mutation input. So, accordingly, the input we call it with is the input that will be received here. We need a variable is liked by me here. Then, information about this idea is located in the getID endpoint. Therefore, through trpc.utils, we request the currently cached data. Here, old getIdea data. This is done as follows. trpc.utils, procedure name, and method getData. And in getData, we need to pass the input of this procedure. This procedure specifically had input with the request of the current idea's ID, meaning the request made when we accessed this page. This request is getIdea. All right, so we got information about the getIdea request of the current idea. Then, technically speaking, there might be something missing in terms of TRPC. But actually, it will be there because we accessed this page. Nevertheless, to avoid some type errors, we need to perform this check. Firstly, we check that the old getIdea data roughly exists and that the idea returned in it is not null. Okay? And now we want to overwrite our cached data as a result of this response. And for that, we generate them. New getIdea data. We take all the old data completely. It returned the idea in this object. So, we rewrite the idea. We put all the old data about this idea here. Even if it returns only the idea and nothing else, it's convenient to do so, because if you later add some outputs other than the idea to the top level, you'll have something else displayed here. This something else will be taken from the old idea. And this is the most correct way of overwriting an object. Okay? So we take all the old data about the idea, but rewrite the field from liked by me and take it from input. So what we passed into input, we immediately substitute the same information into the old request from getID. If we look at this getID endpoint, we see that it also returned this very liked by me, and this is what we overwrite. Okay. And also, we rewrite the likes count. On the front end, nothing prevents us, well, as I described, from manually calculating new values. That is, we take information about the number of likes from the old data, and if we liked it, we add 1. If not, we subtract 1. That's it. At the same time, when the response comes back from the backend, this data will be overwritten again. If it turns out that someone else liked it while we did, we will receive updated information about the number of likes. Here we just kind of predict what should happen after a like and immediately substitute this new record in the data returning from getID into getID using the setData method. Again, we pass input because theoretically we might have cache information for getID for different IDs. We're specifically interested in data for this particular idea and passing new data there. That's it. Thanks to this line, we instantly change the cache state for this request, and on the front end, the like count updates, and the button state switches between liked and not liked. All right. So this is our mutation. We also ask to invalidate this endpoint getID, just in case when it's successful. And it refetches in the background just to ensure our like processed and the like count is correct, and so on. So initially, we make assumptions and set values that should ideally occur. Then we invalidate that request, and it arrives. So, ideally, the result should be that our assumptions were correct. Everything changed. Then there was an invalidation of this query. We re-requested it, but it returned the same data we expected. And therefore, nothing should change visually for the user. All right? So that's the logic itself. Now, what do we have in JSX? So we simply have a button with CSS like button. Okay, that's redundant. Fine. And here we call the mutation itself. There. We take setIdeaLike, which we defined here, and pass our input to it. Idea ID and isLikedByMe, which should be the opposite of its current value. So, if it wasn't liked before we pass that, we are liking it now. Conversely, if it was liked, this exclamation mark allows us to pass the opposite value. Was true becomes false, was false becomes true. And here, in this button, we simply have text, unlike or like. So if it is liked, we offer to unlike it. If it is not liked, we offer to like it. All right. At this point, it's just a button with text, which I actually want to style as a link. But in the future, we'll replace it with a heart icon, which will change color depending on whether it's liked. Okay, let's go and add the necessary CSS styles. All right, View Idea page. We have this button somewhere here. We'll give it some margin and also specify that it should be like our link. This is our mixin that we set up. So it's just a link, despite being a button. Its design will be like a link. Good. So, add it here. Let's see how it works. Well, we see that the number of likes is displayed, and there's a button, but it doesn't look like a real link. And often you might want to create something that looks like a link, but is actually a button in HTML. So you'll need to make some improvements in Mix and Link. You need to reset the default styles of an HTML button. Add the following so that it has no background, no border, no padding, and the cursor is always a pointer. And it wasn't there, but let's add that our links have an underline. Let's save and check our design. Good. The link appeared. Let's check how it works. So I click like, and I click unlike. Okay, it works. But as you can see, our page blinks. Why does it blink? It blinks because of the following. Here, when the mutation is successful, we invoke invalidate get ID to send another request to our backend and get the latest data to make sure everything is calculated correctly. Here. See, if I comment this out now, then the page will stop blinking. But, as we see from the requests, the request for the updated get ID doesn't occur. And accordingly, we don't ensure our data is up to date. All right, let's return this record and ensure the page doesn't flicker, but the request is sent to the backend. Here I'm doing like unlike. Now let's look at the requests here. Attention. Like unlike. Like unlike. Let's see what we got here. We constantly send isSET like, followed by a get ID request. But our page wrapper, which wrapped this page, handles the loading display. Let's look into this page wrapper to see how loading is determined. We say that if loading and if fetching, then we need to show a loader. Let's change the logic here a bit. Yes, okay. Let's first figure out what is in is loading and what is in is fetching, and how and when they change. For this, let's call console.log and output these values. So, is loading, query reward, is loading, and is fetching query reward, and let's study this. You can look it up in the documentation. You can play around yourself, but it's always a good approach to set console.log and study a bit. Let's refresh the page and see what happened. Initially, it loaded, and is loading and is fetching were true. Then both became is false, presumably when everything was loaded. We set a like and watch. Our is loading never became true again, but is fetching became true again at some point, from which we conclude it works like this. So, when there is no data and it is loading is true. If the data is loading but we have it, is loading won't turn true, and is fetching becomes true every time a request is sent to the backend. And sometimes we need to show a loading indicator when fetching happens. Sometimes we don't need it. So let's add a small improvement, a little customization to our with page wrapper. Let's add the following field here. Let's call it show loader on fetching and let it receive a Boolean value. And accordingly, we need to get these parameters. Let's add them here, and by default, let's say we want them to be displayed. Later, when adding many other pages, you'll figure out how you want it to work by default, but I'll add true. Okay? And then we do the following. In this load condition, specify that this field should be relied upon only if we want the loader to show during fetching, okay? So, that means everything is working as it was by default. But for this page, we want to change the behavior. Show loading on fetching. Let's set it to false here instead. And let's take a look. Okay, network, like, unlike. Requests are sent both for setID like and getLike. That's the idea, but the page doesn't change anymore. All right, like and unlike work. Let's take a look at the list of ideas. Everywhere likes are 0, but here is 1. Like. Remove the like and check all ideas. All right, likes became 0. Well, let's check that everything works properly. Let's put our like on this idea and log in as other users and like it again. Make sure everything displays correctly. Okay, let's log out and let's register a user with a nickname HHH. All right. Let's go and add an extra like. Likes became 2. Excellent. And here also 2. Like here, 1. Likes became 2. Good. Remove the like this. Great. It works. Like this. It seems we've successfully implemented the feature. I'd like to take another look at the backend to make sure we understand everything clearly. Right? Look, in our endpoint, for example, get idea. Why is this field even called ideas likes? Here and here. The name of this field is determined not by the model name, but by the name of this relation. So if, for example, you don't like ideas likes, you see that in idea, why repeat the word ideas here? Nothing prevents changing this to likes. There you go. But in this case, you need to use likes everywhere, not ideas likes. There you go. We can argue about how to do it better here, but we've already done it this way, so let's keep it this way. There you go. Technically, you could request ideas likes from the user, and thereby create a list of all ideas liked by the user, for instance. There you go. Well, you can review the backend code again, or read the Prisma documentation related to count in select and count in include to understand this better. Here, I'll probably note that we're counting exclusively the ideas likes linked to this idea because, again, we have the relationship set this way in Prisma through this idea ID. It automatically searches there. All right. I hope it's more or less clear. If not, just check the lesson description for the source code and figure out the parts you didn't understand, or try writing the code yourself. Thank you all. Let's move on.